Watch SpongeBob from 1999, and then watch SpongeBob from 2009 back to back. Same character, same pineapple, same bikini bottom, completely different show. The humor lands differently, the characters feel like strangers, the stories go places that would have been unthinkable in season 2. Something changed, and it didn't happen all at once. It happened 10 separate ways, one building on the next, until the show that millions of people grew up loving was barely recognizable. Today, we are breaking down every single one of them. Welcome to Cartoonology. Let's get into it. 1. The man who built it walked away. SpongeBob SquarePants was created by Steven Hillenburg, a marine biology educator who spent years teaching kids about ocean life before turning those ideas into a cartoon. That background wasn't just a fun fact. It showed up in the show constantly. The way the underwater world operated, the behavior of the creatures, the internal logic of Bikini Bottom. All of it came from someone who genuinely understood the ocean and genuinely cared about building something real. When Hillenburg pitched the show to Nickelodeon in the late 1990s, he brought a literal underwater terrarium with models of the characters and played Hawaiian music in the room. That is the level of intention that went into this. Hillenburg had expressed concerns about the show running too long. After 3 seasons, he paused production entirely to make the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, which he directed himself and released in November 2004. The 2004 movie is widely seen as a natural ending to the original run of the show. SpongeBob and Patrick go on a road trip to Shell City. Mr. Krabs gets saved. Bikini Bottom gets its king back. The credits roll. It felt complete in a way most animated movies don't. Nickelodeon chose to continue the series due to its massive popularity and commercial success. Hillenburg stepped down as showrunner, appointed his colleague Paul Tibbitt to take over, and moved into a distant executive producer role where he reviewed episodes without controlling them. He was still in the building, but the daily creative decisions were no longer his. This shift is often seen as a turning point for the show's direction. Many fans argue that the tone changed noticeably after Hillenburg stepped back from daily creative control. Seasons 4 and 5 still held together reasonably well. By season 6, the gap was difficult to ignore. When Hillenburg returned to a more active role for the 2015 film The SpongeBob Movie, Sponge Out of Water, many fans noticed the difference almost immediately. The characters felt more like themselves. That wasn't coincidence. Hillenburg was diagnosed with ALS in March 2017, kept working as long as he was able, and passed away on November 26, 2018, at 57. The show kept going. 2. SpongeBob stopped being SpongeBob. In seasons 1 through 3, SpongeBob was an adult with a childlike view of the world. He was optimistic and enthusiastic, but he wasn't stupid. He could hold a job. He could read a situation. He had real emotional responses to things that actually mattered. When he cried in Help Wanted because he thought he wasn't ready for the job he'd wanted his whole life, that hit because it came from a real place. When he stood up to the customer at the end of pizza delivery after Squidward got humiliated, that moment landed because SpongeBob was capable of reading the room and acting on it. He was genuinely likable because his positivity felt earned and his flaws felt human. Some viewers feel SpongeBob became more exaggerated and childlike in later seasons. He cried over broken spatulas. He panicked over ripped shirts while identical shirts hung directly behind him. His dynamic with Squidward is often seen as more aggressive in certain post-movie episodes. Boating buddies and choir boys are frequently cited as examples where his behavior crosses from oblivious into something harder to watch. The loudness replaced the heart. In the early show, SpongeBob's best moments were quiet ones. Sandy's homesickness in Texas, the sunrise in Rockabye Bivalve, the whole back half of Band Geeks, which holds a 9.7 out of 10 on IMDb and is widely considered one of the greatest cartoon episodes ever made, and which works specifically because SpongeBob's warmth in that episode feels genuine, not performed. Many fans feel that by season 7, that version of the character had mostly disappeared, replaced by a louder, more reactive version, who existed mainly to generate noise and physical gags. 3. They kept making Patrick dumber. Patrick's star in the early seasons was dim, but not broken. He had moments of surprising clarity mixed in with the stupidity. In No Weenies Allowed, he figures out a workaround that technically requires reasoning. In The Secret Box, he pulls off a slow burn that suggests more going on underneath the surface than he lets on. His stupidity was a comedic texture, not his entire identity. The show used it when it served the story and let it rest when it didn't. Patrick's character was increasingly portrayed as more extreme and less self-aware in later seasons. In The Splinter from season 6, he makes SpongeBob's infected thumb significantly worse by packing garbage into it with a hammer, genuinely believing he is helping. He then leaves when SpongeBob doesn't recover fast enough, not out of cruelty, just out of a total inability to register consequences. In Big Sister Sam, he lets his older sister demolish both SpongeBob and Squidward's houses without intervening, and shows almost no awareness that anything wrong is happening. The early Patrick was funny because his stupidity had a kind of accidental charm, and because underneath it there was still loyalty. He was on SpongeBob's side. The later Patrick is widely considered to have become harder to root for, losing much of that warmth in favor of behavior that many fans found more frustrating than funny. That shift changed the whole dynamic at the center of the show, because the SpongeBob and Patrick friendship was one of the things that made it worth watching in the first place. 4. Mr. Krabs is often seen as the villain now. In the first 2 seasons, Mr. Krabs was a flawed but functional authority figure. He was greedy and cheap, but he also genuinely cared about SpongeBob. There was warmth in early episodes. He gave real advice. He showed fatherly concern at moments that felt earned. His money obsession was a running joke with a human being underneath it, not a replacement for a personality. Mr. Krabs' greed became more central to his character in later seasons, sometimes pushing him into outright antagonistic roles. In The Scent of Money from season 7, he discovers that coins are magnetically attracted to Gary's shell, and immediately starts using Gary to steal loose change from citizens across Bikini Bottom. Gary is visibly suffering throughout the episode. Krabs doesn't stop. He calls Gary a tool and keeps going. That's not a comedic cheapness joke. That's something else. The episode most associated with his decline is One Course Meal from season 7. Mr. Krabs discovers that Plankton has a severe phobia of whales. He disguises himself as his own daughter Pearl and shows up to terrorize Plankton every single day for over 2 weeks. The psychological harassment continues until Plankton, completely worn down, lies down in the middle of the road, waiting for a bus to run him over. He asks SpongeBob to step on him. SpongeBob confronts Mr. Krabs. Krabs laughs and shows no remorse. He faces no real punishment. The episode was widely criticized by fans for its darker themes, including a scene interpreted as a suicide attempt, and has a 3.7 out of 10 on IMDb. Watch Mojo ranked it number 1 on their list of the worst SpongeBob episodes ever made. Some reports suggest even those involved found the episode uncomfortable to produce. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. 5. Gross out replaced clever writing. The early show was never squeaky clean. Nasty Patty from season 3 is about 2 characters who spend an entire episode convinced they accidentally killed a health inspector and frantically trying to dispose of the evidence. That is a dark premise. It works because the escalation is funny, the writing is sharp, and every beat earns its place. The grossness serves the story. The story doesn't exist just to be gross. Later seasons placed much more emphasis on visual shock humor, which many viewers felt replaced the earlier writing style. House Fancy, which aired in 2008, contains a scene where Squidward's toenail gets ripped off in graphic slow-motion detail. There is no real comedic payoff attached to it. The scene exists to show the toenail being ripped off. The Splinter, also from season 6, runs an entire 11-minute episode on a single infected splinter that grows progressively more detailed and graphic. Patrick hammers it deeper. He packs garbage on top of it. By the end, when Mr. Krabs removes it, the wound sprays across the room. The episode holds a 4.0 out of 10 on IMDb and is routinely described by fans as one of the most uncomfortable viewing experiences in the show's history. Graveyard Shift, for comparison, holds a 9.3 out of 10 on IMDb and is also gross in places, but every gross moment is attached to a joke that earns it. That's the difference. One approach uses discomfort to build comedy. The other uses discomfort instead of it. 6. Squidward became a punching bag. Squidward in the early seasons was a specific kind of unlikable. He was arrogant, lazy, and self-deluded about his talents. When bad things happened to him, they were usually connected to his own choices. The camping episode, where he gets mauled by a sea bear because he refuses to stop playing his clarinet despite repeated warnings, is the cleanest example. The misfortune followed the characterization. It made sense, and it was funny because of that logic. In later later seasons, Squidward is widely considered to have become a character who suffers without that connection to anything he's actually done. Fans have referred to this era as Squidward torture, highlighting how frequently he is put through extended misfortune with no clear payoff or logic. In Choir Boys, SpongeBob follows Squidward on the way to his audition for the Bikini Bottom men's choir, singing and disrupting him the whole way, and directly causes him to miss his opportunity. In Squid's Visit, SpongeBob secretly redecorates his entire house to look exactly like Squidward's home in order to lure Squidward inside. It is deeply unsettling. Squidward's house burns down as a result. SpongeBob is the cause. No consequence follows. The early show used Squidward's bad luck as a comedic rhythm that had its own internal logic. Many fans feel the later seasons stripped out that logic and just kept delivering the bad luck, which stopped being funny and started feeling mean. 7. The show lost its emotional core. Classic SpongeBob had real emotional sincerity sitting underneath all the absurdity. Gary Come Home from season 4 works because the show had spent years building up SpongeBob and Gary's relationship, so that when it gets threatened, the audience actually feels it. The song sequence in that episode is not ironic. It's played completely straight. Grandma's Kisses from season 2 works because it taps into a universal experience, the embarrassment of wanting to stay a kid while other people expect you to act grown up. Band Geeks works because after 11 minutes of chaos, Squidward gets one genuine moment of triumph, and the show lets it breathe. Many fans feel the emotional depth of earlier seasons became much less prominent over time. When characters are reduced to single exaggerated traits and stories stop giving them genuine stakes, the comedy has less to hold on to. The jokes in the early show landed harder because the audience actually cared about the people delivering them. Many viewers describe seasons 6 and 7 not just as less funny, but as genuinely empty in a way the earlier show never was. 8. The stories became mean without a point. There is a specific difference between dark humor and mean-spirited storytelling. Dark humor has a point. It uses discomfort to say something. Mean-spirited storytelling just puts characters through suffering with no payoff and no lesson and moves on. Some episodes in the later run were criticized for focusing more on character suffering than on any kind of story purpose. A Pal for Gary, which aired in January 2010, runs 11 minutes of SpongeBob dismissing every warning sign that his pet is in danger, blaming Gary for the consequences of his own neglect, and ending without a single moment of reflection or acknowledgement. SpongeBob doesn't apologize. The episode just ends. Gary's suffering is the entire content of the episode. Stuck in the Ringer from season 7 follows the same pattern. SpongeBob gets permanently sealed in his shower ringer by Patrick trying to help. He spends the episode unable to work or function. When the townspeople weigh in, their response is to tell SpongeBob that his unhappiness is his own fault for being upset. The show presents that as the moral. Many fans see these episodes as representative of a writing approach that stopped asking whether the audience should walk away from an episode feeling anything worthwhile. 9. The humor stopped working for adults. Seasons 1 through 3 worked for adults and kids simultaneously because the writing rewarded attention at multiple levels. Krusty Krab training video is structured exactly like a real corporate training video, complete with the kind of jargon and formatting that adults immediately recognize. It gets funnier the more workplace experience you have. Graveyard Shift is a horror movie parody, dense enough with genre references that adults catch things kids completely miss. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy draws on decades of superhero comic conventions. These episodes didn't just tolerate adult viewers, they were designed for them. The style of humor shifted in later seasons, with many viewers arguing it became less layered and more direct. Certain episodes, like Are You Happy Now from season 8, were criticized by fans for handling heavier themes in a way some felt was not appropriate for the show's tone. The episode contains 2 scenes that many viewers interpreted as references to depression and self-harm, which generated significant discussion about whether the writing had the craft to handle that kind of content responsibly. The early show trusted its audience to engage on multiple levels. Many fans feel the later show largely stopped trying to earn that engagement, and the adult audience that had grown up with the series gradually drifted away. 10. The franchise refused to let it end. Every item on this list connects back to one decision. The franchise continued expanding due to its long-term success and demand, and every consequence of that expansion played out across the following spanning 2 decades. A show built around a very specific creative vision has now produced well over 300 episodes. The universe has expanded into spin-offs, including The Patrick Star Show, which launched in 2021, and Camp Coral, a prequel series that also debuted that year and features younger versions of the characters as children, a concept Hillenburg had specifically resisted when Nickelodeon originally pitched it to him before the show even launched. Hillenburg expressed concerns about over-commercialization of the character during his lifetime. The New York Times reported he once told a colleague that his biggest fear was being at the beach one day and watching one of the SpongeBob merchandise dolls wash up on shore like garbage. He was a marine biologist who loved the ocean. The idea of his creation becoming disposable plastic waste troubled him deeply. The version of SpongeBob that existed between 1999 and 2004 is still there to watch. 3 seasons and a movie, made by the person who built every rule of the world they take place in, hold up completely on their own. Band Geeks still has a 9.7 on IMDb. Graveyard Shift still has a 9.3. Those episodes don't need defending. The problem is that for many viewers, especially people discovering the show today, all of that arrives inside a package that also includes everything that followed. The original gets filtered through the reputation of the whole. That is the actual lasting damage. Not just bad episodes in isolation, but the slow weight of a franchise that kept going long after the thing that made it genuinely great had already said everything it needed to say. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.